the opposition has demanded that this meeting be conducted urgently, that we urgently consider the matter of the travel that occurred over the holiday break, where we saw people sleeping on the floor of airports, where we saw people being shuttled around in foreign countries from hotel lobby to hotel lobby, people trapped on trains, etc. And this follows, of course, the disastrous summer travel season, where people were once again separated from their baggage, where they were sleeping on airport floors, where the system completely failed. And we were promised, quite frankly, by the Liberal minister that these matters were addressed, that he had it under control, that the broken system had been fixed. Clearly, it has not been fixed. There are still massive problems. And quite frankly, I think we in the Conservative Party are tired of hearing Liberal ministers say that things are unacceptable when they have the power to make change. And that's what we are wanting to get out of this meeting here today. We want the minister to come, to appear before us, to answer questions about how he allowed the system to stay broken, how he allowed airports to fail to serve their customers, how airlines failed to communicate with their customers, how once again we had the same failures in many cases with baggage delivery, etc. Communications nightmares where passengers were an afterthought, quite frankly. And we need this committee to do some serious work and to hold people accountable, starting with the minister. And that's why we believe, and as was said in the letter that we sent to the chair to demand this meeting, is that the minister should appear for 2 hours to discuss what he has done and what he hasn't done, because quite frankly, whatever he has done has not got the job done. So we need to get to the bottom of this here at this committee. We are the body that is charged with holding the department, holding the minister accountable on behalf of all parliamentarians and on behalf of all Canadians. So we intend to take that work seriously. This should be conduct these hearings that we have proposed should be conducted seriously. They should be conducted thoroughly. We should make sure that we don't simply scratch the surface here, that we once and for all get down to the bottom of why this has happened now for 2 travel seasons in a row and what can be done to prevent it from happening in the future, because quite frankly, Canadians deserve better. And it's up to this group to make sure that we get the answers that we deserve. And that, again, starts with the minister coming to answer for his department and to answer for his actions. And that will be the focus that we want to see going forward. In addition, we want to hear from not just the airlines, but we want to, who do have, they do have to answer, but so does every other part of the federally regulated system. We need to hear from airports. We need to hear from the Canadian Transportation Agency, which currently has a 30,000 person backlog, and it takes 18 months to have a complaint heard from passengers who are experiencing problems with the airlines. We need to talk to Via Rail and CN Rail about how they are going to address the concerns that were raised by the delays that happened with that entity. This isn't just about airline passenger protection. We need to talk about other modes of transportation that were impacted as well. So we don't intend to allow the buck to be passed, to have more tweets about how things are unacceptable. We need to make change, we need to demand change, and we need to demand accountability. And that's what we're here to demand today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strahl. Next, we have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to begin by saying that we co-signed the letter calling for this urgent meeting of the Transport Committee because, like so many other MPs, we were receiving communication from constituents who were stuck in incredibly difficult and stressful situations over the holidays. And I thought I would set the stage for my remarks just by reading a brief excerpt from one of the emails I received from the mother of a constituent whose son was stuck in Mexico and unable to get home. And she writes to me, quote, he is getting no reliable information from Sunwing as to how long this may last. Every day he has to check out of the hotel and wait in the lobby to see if he is included in the passenger list that will be provided a room for the next night. He is frantic. From my end, I have made countless phone calls to Sunwing and have not been able to talk to anyone. There is no reliable information and no communication from Sunwing representatives. He cannot afford to book a return flight with another airline and then fight with Sunwing to get his money back. I know there are certain rights he has, but they seem to be difficult to access, and our government does not seem interested in their constituents' dilemmas. He is not alone. There are hundreds of Canadians in this same situation. Something has to be done for these people. I'm a senior on pensions that are very limited. I cannot afford to fly him home either. Please, please help. Now, this person ended up having to fly her son home on another airline at huge personal expense. And this is one of many, many stories that I believe this committee needs to get to the bottom of. We need to hear, obviously, from the airlines, from the different parties in the transportation system that failed to uphold even the most basic level of customer care that Canadians deserve. But most importantly, we need to hear from the Minister of Transport, the person who is charged with overseeing Canada's transportation system and upholding the rights of Canadian passengers. We know from the work of the Transport Committee, and I'll note that the committee is currently studying the issue of air passenger rights, we know that Canada's approach to air passenger rights is deeply flawed, and that from the very beginning, it has fallen short of the model set by the European Union and others around the world. This needs to change. We now have an admission from the minister that the system isn't working. We have a backlog of over 33,000 complaints in front of the CTA, and we have thousands and thousands of passengers across Canada who, since the beginning of the pandemic, have faced delays and cancellations that have upended their lives and cost them money and convenience. So we need to situate this discussion not only in the context of the chaos, the travel chaos that happened over the holidays, get answers about when the minister intervened, what actions he took, how the airlines allowed it to get so bad and failed to deliver basic customer care, but we need to address the larger context as well. And that context is the fact that we have a failed system in Canada for dealing with passenger rights. We have a clear roadmap for making changes to the legislation and the regulations that would allow us to catch up with the example set by the European Union. And we need to know from the minister when he plans to act, when he plans to table those changes. After all, we're just a few months after the last revisions to air passenger protections in this country, and now we're facing another delay in getting the change that Canadians so rightly deserve. So, Mr. Chair, I very much look forward to Thursday's meeting. I look forward to holding this government accountable. I look forward to getting answers on behalf of the hundreds of Canadians who were stuck in such difficult situations over the holidays. And I hope through the work of this committee, we can improve Canada's air passenger protections for once and for all, so that no one has to face these kind of experiences again. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Prochainement, nous avons Madame Vignola.
Now we have Madame Vignola. You have the floor, Madame. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm completely in agreement with my colleagues, given the unacceptable situation that travelers have had to go through. If there's a storm, well, there's a storm. We're in Canada. It can happen. But airlines do have a duty. And after hearing from all kinds of people, it's clear that they have not been meeting the requirements of their duty. Has the Canadian Transportation Agency enough support from the government so that it can do its work adequately? Are there enough officials so that they can apply the rules adequately? Are there transporters who, once they're aware of complaints, how can I put this, simply seem to close their eyes to the regulations? people make a complaint. They say, well, they're not happy. Well, are we going to process it? I don't know. We're going to keep making money. These are legitimate questions. We shouldn't have to be asking these questions, but these are legitimate questions. Now, with respect to the reasons for delay, well, if there's a storm, we understand. Nevertheless, clients, travelers, should remain a priority. This said, the treatment provided to passengers once the storm is over, all this should be questioned. We want to hear from the minister for 2 hours, but also from the transportation companies, airlines and railways. Why is it so difficult to apply the regulations? I don't think the regulations are strong enough. We need far tougher regulations that protect travelers better. These companies have very clear obligations to communicate information on the state of the situation. If things don't improve, they have to offer people shelter or hotels. Now, there's a clause in the legislation that they can't take off before a certain time. Nevertheless, we know very well that a storm will only might last 2 or 3 hours or till the next day, and people should be compensated. Now, among the people we should meet with, we should hear from, there are service providers at airports, a minister, and there's someone else who's extremely important and who we should hear from and who is essential to hear from, and that is passengers, travelers, all the passengers who have been harmed, who have been hurt by these delays. We should look at protection of consumers' rights and travelers' rights. These people in these associations also have expertise, and it's very important that we hear from them in committee because these people have a great deal to say. So, what do I expect? I expect real changes, sustainable, durable changes, effective changes, so that airlines and other transporters will feel responsible, accountable to their clients, their source of income, their source of revenue. There's also a point of honor here. When you buy a ticket, you're basically entering into a contract. And this contract has to be honored. If people can't honor a contract, it's quite normal to consider that the client, the passenger, has been harmed and appropriate compensation has to be provided. And our role is to help them in this. The situation or the situations we've seen with airlines over the past few months, things that continue on, and this despite solutions that don't seem to be all that effective, these situations are such that our airlines and Canada, sort of by ricochet, have not been accountable. It's disagreeable. It's an unpleasant reality, but these are the facts. This is not good for us, for our reputation. And as a critic in tourism, this is not good for us on the international scene, because tourism is a very important part of our economy. It brings a lot of money into the country. All these are reasons why we should have these meetings. And I'll end by stressing the fact that we have to avoid certain things. We have to avoid certain traps. One trap would be to go too fast and think that we're done with the subject. Yes, we have to act quickly. We have to act with due diligence. But to try to do this in one day, even a long meeting, I think this would not be sending the right message. I want to know if we will have the opportunity to really thoroughly question the people involved in this situation. We have to be able to make sure that the rights of citizens and parliamentarians will be heard and at the same time respected. I think that we have to begin our discussion with two major meetings so that we can properly cover this whole issue and come up with recommendations that will be, at least I hope will be, respected. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci à vous, Madame Vignola.
Thank you, Madame Vignola. And now we have Madame Koutrakis. You have the floor.
The opportunity to say a few words. And thank you especially for being the first one to suggest that we hold meetings on this topic. I will note with some amusement after listening to my esteemed colleagues that our opposition colleagues demanded we hold this meeting after you had already indicated your intention to hold one, and we had already started the process of organizing it. Nonetheless, I will be brief in my remarks. Like many MPs, I had constituents who were adversely affected by the travel disruptions over the holidays and who received poor service. Canadians have had a rough few years going through the pandemic. Many were looking forward to a break in the holidays and a return to normalcy. I'm very disappointed that many had their plans altered or ruined. As the minister remarked, this was completely unacceptable. Comme beaucoup des députés, j'ai eu des commentaires qui ont été durement touchés par...
Like a lot of MPs, I have heard from people who have been hurt by the delays and disruptions and who received poor service. Canadians have been going through difficult years with the pandemic. Many were impatiently waiting to be able to go back to normal. I am really disappointed that so many people had their plans ruined. As the minister pointed out, this is quite unacceptable. Canadians deserve better, and I think that this committee has a role to play in educating the public on what happened. With respect to accountability, the accountability of the companies involved, they have to be able to assure us that this will not happen again.
And I think this committee has a role to play in educating the public about what happened, about holding the relevant organizations accountable, and in developing recommendations on how to avoid this from happening again. I am sincerely, eagerly looking forward to get to work underway and for witnesses to appear and answer the tough questions and to hopefully provide the answers to all Canadians, the answers that they deserve, and to ensure that this does not happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Ms. Koutrakis. Are there other members who would like to share their remarks? Monsieur Berthold, la parole est à vous.
Mr. Berthold, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I really don't know where to start. This meeting comes at a time where it's essential for Canadians, especially those who have been traveling over the holidays, but those who will be traveling in the future, because we know that there will be storms in Canada. And it seems that the Liberals unfortunately, are saying, well, we're having a meeting. Listen, Canadians want us to deal with this problem. It's quite legitimate that they should wish this. And this meeting was convened following the request of members of the opposition. And if we were able to meet so quickly, it's that we didn't wait. We said we absolutely have to have a meeting as soon as possible because people deserve answers. Why? Because Canadians who had to wait 12 hours in planes, people who were in airports for 18 hours and longer. There are people who weren't able to get any answers whatsoever. They didn't know when they would be able to get home. They didn't know where their baggage was. It was catastrophic. It was like we were going through the same crisis as when other crises in the past for very different reasons. It's quite unacceptable that Canada, which is a G7 country and whose infrastructures are supposed to be appropriate and adequate, I'd like us to keep this a reputation, our good reputation. Now, we want to convene, we have convened this meeting and we want to hear from the minister who can talk about air travel and rail travel. It is the minister who has to come and answer our questions and explain why he has once again failed to put in place a system that works for Canadians. It's hardly surprising if you look at some of the minister's statements. And I'd like to remind members of committee of what he said. On May 2022, the minister said that travellers, that there were delays because there hadn't been travel for so long. So he's saying, according to the minister, he's saying that the delays were due to travellers themselves because they weren't used to traveling. And there were certain events, and there were also quite a few tweets, because we get a lot of tweets from the Department of Transport. They kept saying, it's unacceptable, it's unacceptable. But does anyone understand about this? Is the minister really in charge? Why is this continuing? Why is nothing being done if the minister is really in charge? Why simply say it's unacceptable and do nothing? Mr. Chairman, I think that the fact is that we have to hear from the Minister of Transport, and he has to explain why he hasn't been able to get anything done. Why, with all the tools at his disposal, why all the tools at his disposal have not been used, because he is, after all, the minister. Why, with all his powers, with his ability to act, have we had to deal with a crisis, the kind of crisis we've been through over the holiday period? This is why it's important to hear from the minister, to have the time necessary to talk to him. An hour isn't enough, in my opinion. I think there are Canadians who have had to wait 12 to 18 hours in a plane and want the minister to answer questions, but also from questions from the Liberals who have heard from people in their ridings. I'm sure they have constituents who've had suffered from these delays. It's not a question of political stripe. There have been people all over the country who have had to deal with storms, and not always weather storms. Sometimes they were administrative storms or bureaucratic storms. The minister must act. He must take measures to deal with the situation. So, Mr. Chair, it's important that the minister be the first person we hear from. He has to explain what has been done, what airlines have been called to account, and above all, what are the concrete measures that will be taken for Canadians who have had to wait hours and hours in a plane or in an airport, and this all over the country? Mr. Chairman, for all these reasons, it's important that we meet with the Minister, and as my colleague Ms. Fignola and as my colleague Mr. Stroll said, we absolutely must have answers from the Minister. We want to take the time to do this adequately in order to deal with the situation once and for all. I think it's unacceptable to do nothing. Canadians deserve better, and they deserve better from their government. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berthaud.
Followed by Ms. Landsman. Ms. Katrakis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just simply wanted to make a few comments with regard to the minister, and just to state that he has never refused an invitation to appear at this committee, and he has already publicly indicated more than once, several times, to media and in written media and also at radio interviews that he will accept this one. I just simply wanted to remind everyone that he has appeared 5 times at this committee last year, with the most recent one being this past December. That being said, I am sure the minister will accommodate us as much as possible. As we all know, ministers' schedules are incredibly busy. So I'm sure, given, availability in his schedule, this will be the case this time as well. The only thing that I would kindly request and ask my colleagues, though, let's treat him with the same respect that he treats our committee. So it's not like this minister has, been difficult and hasn't been accepting invitations. I think if anything, he's been more than willing to appear and answer the questions and provide answers that Canadians request of him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katrakis. I don't see Ms. Landsman's hand anymore. I'm wondering if we should go to Mr. Stroll, unless Ms. Landsman, you still wanted to speak?
I don't know. She's
okay. Mr. Stroll, we'll go with you.
Just to jump back in there, I don't think that we, quite frankly, as members of this committee, need the parliamentary secretary to instruct us on how we should question the minister. I think he's quite capable to come before this committee to defend himself, and we will question him as we see fit, because we are here representing Canadians who, quite frankly, had their lives turned upside down, who with small children were on planes for 11 hours trapped on the tarmac, who were sleeping on the floor of a cold airport. And so, if we're upset and we want answers from the minister, we're going to ask for them. And we're not going to soft pedal that, and we're not going to have him shielded by other members of this committee. So I take offense to, quite frankly, to being instructed as a parliamentarian and a member of this committee on how we should treat the minister. The minister's treatment of Canadian passengers is what we need to talk about here, not that we treat the minister with kid gloves if he deigns to come to appear before this committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stroll. Madame Vignola.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Ms. Vignola. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just take a few moments. We don't want to attack anyone. No party wants to do that. And we don't want to attack anyone in any party. But we are acting in the interest of the people, of the public we represent. I'm not representing my party here. I'm representing the people who voted for me and those who did not vote for me. I have to concentrate. We have to concentrate on that. Yes, we have questions for the minister. We will put those questions respectfully, obviously, but we have to ask these questions. We're not going to be accompanying these questions with swearing or insults. But we know that things are not working, and we have to work together for the good of the public, not for a political party, as wonderful as that might be. I'm very serious here. I think in asking the minister to appear for 2 hours. Yes, we could say that might be difficult given his schedule. I'm aware of that. Nevertheless, I believe that the public deserves 2 hours of answers. Same thing holds for the airline companies. Far too often, they have not been properly answering questions. They're saying it's not our fault. For us is not someone working at a desk in an airline company who's going to come up with solutions. It's not Sunwing that's going to come up with the answers. I think this is teamwork. We have to talk to various experts. There are experts that can, from the airlines, who can also participate. Working together, we can find solutions that can help us defend the people we represent. That should be our focus. And I think, unless I'm in unicorn world, I think that it is our duty, the duty of each and every one of us, to represent the public and the public's interests. As for the interests of CEOs and presidents of these big companies, they can defend themselves. We represent the public. And I think that asking questions is part of our duty. We don't intend to attack anyone. I think we have to meet and do our job responsibly. That's what I expect of us, and that's what the public expects of us. And the more respectful we are, the easier it will be to come up with solutions that airlines will have to respect. Because it won't have any political flavor to it, the flavor of any political party to it. This will be on behalf of all Canadians. Will do it in a respectful way. I know that we have 53 minutes left, perhaps a little more than that for our meeting today. I suggested earlier that we should not act precipitately. We should have the meeting with the minister and have another meeting to take the time to, or other meetings to hear from all the people we have to hear from. I'd like to hear what you think about that. I know that there will be a proposal sent out, which the clerk will distribute. We might have a meeting this week and another next week to properly cover these subjects, and I'd like to hear what you think about these proposals. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Vignola. I think with the motions that I'm going to read shortly, we should make sure that the meeting Thursday will be part of our study, our continuing study, which will continue again when the House is back January 30th. There will be meetings on this subject, so the various witnesses and everything we talk about Thursday will be continued when we get back in January, or January 30th. But it's up to committee members to decide on whether or not they want other meetings on this subject before the House comes back at the end of January, beginning of February. But we don't want it. Our goal is not to have simply that one meeting, but to have other meetings so that we can hear from all the people we have to hear from to come up with a solution.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres membres qui voulaient prendre la parole?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just to flag for the committee that Mrs. Lanceman has lost her connection, and so before we had any votes or anything of that nature, we would want to make sure that that was reestablished. Not sure what the procedure would be. Also, I think at this point, to Madame Vignola's suggestions, we are certainly open to those. I think there are good ideas to study this thoroughly, but I would suggest perhaps that at this point we need to work off of a motion in order to make specific suggestions, as Madame Vignola has. So we would certainly be open to hearing a motion that we can then move into a subsequent discussion on. So I'm not sure what the process is for moving that, but I know we have had some discussions for a framework to start discussions. So maybe we could, I would suggest if committee members are okay, that we move to that phase of the meeting where we can start to get it down into the details of what we'd like to see in those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Strahl, and I will ensure that no vote is called until Ms. Lanceman has reestablished her connection. With the consent of members, I'd like to read the following motion. It is my understanding that there is broad consensus on this motion that reads as follows: that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee commit to undertake a special meeting to study the travel disruptions that occurred during the December 2022, January 2023 holiday period, with a view of understanding why the disruptions occurred, holding those responsible accountable, and identifying what actions are being taken to avoid a recurrence of the problem in the future. That is part of the study, representatives of industry, including Sunwing, Via Rail, Air Canada, and WestJet, the Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver airport authorities, the Canadian Transportation Agency, Transport Canada, as well as the Minister of Transport, be invited to testify, and that, in consultation with the committee members, the chair be empowered to coordinate the resources and scheduling necessary to hold a special meeting on Thursday, January 12th, 2023, and the testimony recorded at the special meeting become part of the committee's ongoing study on air travel passenger rights. Donc, avec ça, je vois la main levée de Madame Vignola.
I see Madame Vignola, you have your hand up. You have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Schiefke. I agree with a good part of the motion. This said, there have been disruptions, that's clear. Unless we want to go after Mother Nature, we cannot do anything about the weather issues. But I'm going to read something. This is it's something that will be sent to the clerk shortly. So after 2023, words 2023 and January 2023, it should be the answers, the responses of the airline companies with respect to determining the delays caused by these weather disruptions will help us come up with measures that will ensure that these things do not hurt passengers in the future. In your motion, you talk about a meeting, a mega meeting on January 12th. I don't disagree with that, but I suggest that on January 12th, there should be 2 meetings that would total 4 hours, 2 hours with the minister and his officials, and then a meeting with travelers' protection groups, and that there be a meeting with transportation companies, with the airlines and railway companies and airport authorities, and another 2-hour meeting with people from Transport Canada. I think that this would really help us deal with this question thoroughly and to talk to the various actors in this matter. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Vignola.
Strahl, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think maybe we can accomplish what Madame Vignola is talking about there with a couple of simple amendments to the motion that you read out. So again, I would beg the indulgence of the clerk and the analysts to capture what I'm going to try to say here. I think we could simply list in amongst the witnesses consumer advocates or affected passengers, however we wanted to indicate that we wanted to expand this to include passenger rights advocates or passengers themselves. So perhaps add them to that long list of people that we wanted to invite to testify. I think we should also invite CN Rail that had a role to play in the Via Rail issue. I believe there are some track management concerns there, so I would request that. And perhaps then, rather than getting into how the meetings are structured or how many we have, that we could say in the I believe it's the third paragraph, the chair be empowered to coordinate the resources and scheduling necessary to hold special meetings beginning on Thursday, January 12th. And then we could then work behind the scenes with the chair and with each other to determine how many meetings we would like, how those should be structured, etc. But I do agree with Madame Vignola on both cases that we should hear from passenger rights advocates, and that we should consider the possibility that we will not be able to conduct all of the business that we wish to in a single meeting on a single day. So this allows for that possibility, but does allow more flexibility for the chair in consultation with members to move forward. So those would be my friendly amendments to expand the witness list by a couple of by two, I guess, CN Rail and passenger rights advocates, if we want to call it that, or passengers themselves. I'm not sure how we would structure that. And that beginning on January 12th would allow us more flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Strahl. So essentially, no fixed date on future meetings above and beyond January 12th. It gives us that flexibility to work out what works best for members as well as witnesses. Thank you. Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with what Mr. Strahl has proposed. I think that it would allow us to hear from a number of other affected parties. I would just offer that it's important that we hear from the minister at the first meeting on the 12th. That would be my expectation. He may have mentioned that, but I didn't catch it. And, you know, I believe that dealing with the rail issues somewhat separately from the air passenger issues would have merit. Because the context of passenger rail is quite different from air transport, particularly when it comes to the existence of the air passenger protections and the situation with CN. So I don't know at this point if that amendment has been typed up, but I would be happy to support moving in that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. I'm looking at the clerk's face, and I do not believe it has been typed up. Perhaps members, if you'll indulge, perhaps we'll give some time for the clerk to type it up, or perhaps to ask questions of clarification to ensure that she better understands exactly what's being asked by Madame Vignola, as well as the amendments by Mr. Strahl and Mr. Bachrach. So, Madame Clerk, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have received indeed the amendment from you, Madame Vignola, en français. Donc, je devrais traduire.
I have the motion in French, so I will translate it. Then,
on the friendly amendment from Mr. Strahl to Ms. Vignola's amendment, please.
So is Madame Vignola okay with what I proposed, perhaps, is the question, Mr. Chair?
Madame Vignola, est-ce que vous êtes en accord avec...
Madame Vignola, do you agree with what Mr. Stroll proposed? Yes, I agree. I think in my amendment, I talked about witnesses from passengers' rights groups. I don't really... I think we should be flexible with respect to the timetable and when we can get everyone together, both parliamentarians and people from these various groups, airlines, passenger rights groups. I think we all, I think we agree pretty well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think that we're coming towards agreement here. The challenge is going to be getting the words over to the clerk and making sure that the words work. I have some proposed wording that I believe captures what Ms. Vignola and Mr. Stroll have offered. And, if it pleases the committee, I'd be happy to read the proposed wording.
I'm looking over at the clerk, and I think she's waiting with bated breath.
Okay, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee commit to undertake special meetings to study the travel disruptions that occurred during the December 2022 to January 2023 holiday period, with the view of understanding why the disruptions occurred, holding those responsible accountable, and identifying what actions are being taken to avoid a recurrence of the problems in the future. That as part of the study, air passenger advocates, affected travelers, Sunwing, Air Canada, and WestJet, the Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver Airport Authorities, Via Rail and CN Rail, the Canadian Transportation Agency, Transport Canada, and the Minister of Transport be invited to testify, and that in consultation with the committee members, the chair be empowered to coordinate the resources and scheduling necessary to hold the first special meeting, necessary to hold the first special meeting on Thursday, January 12th, 2023, and that the testimony recorded at the special meeting become part of the committee's ongoing study on air passenger rights.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Madam Clerk, do you need any further clarification?
If you could, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bachrach, if you could repeat the first line of the second paragraph that starts as part of the study, then yes. Air passenger advocates, and what follows?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So that as part of the study, air passenger advocates, affected travelers, semicolon, Sunwing, Air Canada, and WestJet, semicolon, the Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver Airport Authorities, semicolon, Via Rail and CN Rail, semicolon, the Canadian Transportation Agency, Transport Canada, and the Minister of Transport be invited to testify. And I apologize if the commas and semicolons aren't in proper order there, but something to that effect.
So we do have the motion here. We will circulate it to all, Mr. Chair, if it's your request.
Yes, please. Unless members feel that they understand the motion as was spoken, at which point we can proceed with the vote. Do we have any objection for that? Madame Vignola, Mr. Bachrach? On vous entend pas, Madame Vignola. Vous êtes en sourdine.
We can't hear you, Ms. Vignola. You're on mute. It's almost as if we weren't used to this yet. I don't disagree with this. I just want to make sure that after the 2023 in the first paragraph, that the sentences are changed and are in concordance with what I proposed about the airline companies. And I also want to make sure that, yes, that we have our meeting on Thursday 12th, and that with respect to Mr. Bachrach's motion, that there be a meeting the next week. I'm not quite sure if we were open to another meeting or not. Thank you. Well, to clarify, I think it simply says that January 12th will be the first meeting, but that there will be others that follow. But we don't have any set dates. And that's in order to give us greater flexibility to get in touch with witnesses and to deal with people's schedules to see what dates are best for everyone. So will this be once the House is back, or whether the House is back or not? I think that members feel it should be as soon as possible. So 12th of January, that's a priority. And there might be others, meetings before we come back, before the House comes back at the end of January. Would it be necessary to put this in the motion? Well, as you wish. You are the committee members. I think that the feeling is that we have these meetings as quickly as possible. So if we can confirm witnesses, and if meetings or if members can get to other meetings, we can do that. But it's up to members of the committee.
Je vous remercie de ces précisions. Je pense que...
Thank you for that clarification. I think, like you, I think that committee members want to deal with this issue as quickly and as well as possible, as long as this suits people's schedules. Thank you. Thank you, Madame.
I think there's no objection for members to proceed with a vote on the motion by Madame Vignola as amended by Mr. Strahl and Mr. Bachrach. So if you want to proceed with a recorded division, it would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as you mentioned, the vote is on the motion as amended. So Ms. Koutrakis.
In favor.
Mr. Shahal.
In favor.
Monsieur Iacono.
En faveur.
Mr.
In favor.
Yes.
Mr. Badawi.
In favor.
Mr. Strahl.
In favor.
Mr. Jennings. Oh, Ms. Lensman, sorry. Ms. Lensman.
Yes.
Monsieur Berthold.
Pour.
Yes.
In favor?
Monsieur Muse.
In favor.
Madame Vignola. Madame Vignola.
Ms. Vignola? Sorry. In favor.
Monsieur Bachrach.
In favor.
11. Yeas 11. Oui. 11. Nays 0.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Not to get too technical, I just want to make sure, was that a vote on the amendment or was that a vote on the motion itself? And are we required to vote on the amendment first and then the motion as amended?
If I may, la greffière avait demandé le vote sur la...
I think that the clerk had asked for a vote on the motion as amended.
Today's work, colleagues. Je vous remercie sincèrement pour avoir...
Thank you very much for your time today to deal with this extremely important subject.
To address this very important issue, and I'm looking forward to seeing many of you at Thursday's meeting where we will begin the special meetings with witnesses. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Merci tout le monde. Thank you.